derogatory sense, for purposes of ridicule, as when it is observed, "He says he saw a flying saucer." This second form of usage is the exclusive property of those persons who positively know that all UFOs are nonsense. Fortunately, for the sake of good manners, if for no other reason, the ranks of this knowing category are constantly dwindling. One by one, these people drop out, starting with the instant they see their first UFO. Some weeks after the first UFO was seen on June 24, 1947, the Air Force established a project to investigate and analyze all UFO reports. The attitude toward this task varied from a state of near panic early in the life of the project to that of complete contempt for anyone who even mentioned the words "flying saucer." This contemptuous attitude toward flying saucer nuts prevailed from mid-1949 to mid-1950. During that interval, many of the people who were, or had been, associated with the project believed that the public was suffering from war nerves. Early in 1950, the project, for all practical purposes, was closed out. At least it rated only minimum effort. Those in power now reasoned that if you didn't mention the words "flying saucers," the people would forget them and the saucers would go away. But this reasoning was false, for instead of vanishing, the UFO reports got better and better. Airline pilots, military pilots, generals, scientists, and dozens of other people were reporting UFOs, and in greater detail than in reports of the past. Radars, which were being built for air defense, began to pick up some very unusual targets, thus lending technical corroboration to the unsubstantiated claims of human observers. As a result of the continuing accumulation of more impressive UFO reports, official interest stirred. Early in 1951, verbal orders came down from Major General Charles P. Cabell, then Director of Intelligence for Headquarters, U.S. Air Force, to make a study reviewing the UFO situation for Air Force Headquarters. I had been back in the Air Force about 6 months when this happened. During the Second World War, I had been a B-29 bombardier and radar operator. I went to India, China, and later to the Pacific, with the original B-29 wing. I flew 2 DCFs and some air medals worth of missions, got out of the Air Force after the war, and went back to college. To keep my reserve status while I was in school, I flew as a navigator in an Air Force Reserve troop carrier wing. Not long after I received my degree in aeronautical engineering, the Korean War started and I went back on active duty. I was assigned to the Air Technical Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. ATIC is responsible for keeping track of all foreign aircraft and guided missiles. ATIC also had the UFO project. I had just finished organizing a new intelligence group when General Cabell's order to review past UFO reports came down. Lieutenant Colonel Rosengarten, who received the order at ATIC, called me in and wanted to know if I'd take the job of making the review. I accepted. When the review was finished, I went to the Pentagon and presented my findings to Major General Samford, who had replaced General Cabell as Director of Intelligence. ATIC soon got the word to set up a completely new project for the investigation and analysis of UFO reports. Since I had made the review of past UFO reports, I was the expert, and I got the new job. It was given the code name Project Blue Book, and I was in charge of it until late in 1953. During this time, members of my staff and I traveled close to 500,000, gated dozens of UFO reports, and read and analyzed several thousand more. These included every report ever received by the Air Force. For the size of the task involved, Project Blue Book was always understaffed, even though I did have 10 people on my regular staff, plus many paid consultants representing every field of science. All of us on Project Blue Book had top secret security clearances, so that security was no block in our investigations. Behind this organization was a reporting network made up of every Air Force base intelligence officer and every Air Force radar station in the world, and the Air Defense Command's Ground Observer Corps. This reporting net sent Project Blue Book reports on every conceivable type of UFO by every conceivable type of person. What did these people actually see when they reported that they had observed a UFO? Putting aside truly unidentifiable flying object for the present, this question has several answers. In many instances, it has been positively proved that people have reported balloons, airplanes, stars, and many other common objects as UFOs. The people who make such reports don't recognize these common objects because something in their surroundings temporarily assumes an unfamiliar appearance. Unusual lighting conditions are a common cause of such illusions. A balloon will glow like a ball of fire just at sunset, or an airplane that is not visible to the naked eye suddenly starts to reflect the sun's rays and appears to be a silver ball. Pilots in F-94 jet interceptors chase Venus in the daytime and fight with balloons at night, and people in Los Angeles see weird lights. On October 8, 1954, many Los Angeles newspapers and newscasters carried an item about a group of flying saucers, bright lights, flying in a V formation. The lights had been seen from many locations over Southern California. Pilots saw them while bringing their airplanes into Los Angeles International Airport. Air Force pilots flying out of Long Beach saw them. 2 CBS reporters in Hollywood gave an eyewitness account, and countless people called police and civil defense officials. All of them excitedly reported lights they could not identify. The next day, the Air Force identified the UFOs. They were Air Force airplanes, KC-97 aerial tankers, refueling B-47 jet bombers in flight. The reason for the weird effect that startled so many Southern Californians was that when the refueling is taking place, a floodlight on the bottom of the tanker airplane lights up the bomber that is being refueled. The airplanes were flying high and slowly, so no sound was heard. Only the bright floodlights could be seen. Since most people, even other pilots, have never seen a night aerial refueling operation and could not identify the odd lights they saw, the lights became UFOs. In other instances, common everyday objects look like UFOs because of some odd quirk in the human mind. A star or planet that has been in the sky every day of the observer's life suddenly takes off at high speed on a highly erratic flight path. Or a vapor trail from a high-flying jet, seen 100 times before by the observer, becomes a flying saucer. Some psychologists explain such aberrations as being akin to the crowd behavior mechanism at work in the bobby sox craze. Teenagers don't know why they squeal and swoon when their current fetish sways and croons. Yet everybody else is squealing, so they squeal too. Maybe that great comedian Jimmy Durante has the answer. Everybody wants to get into the act. I am convinced that a certain percentage of UFO reports come from people who see flying saucers because others report seeing them. But this will to see may have deeper roots, almost religious implications for some people. Consciously or unconsciously, they want UFOs to be real and to come from outer space. These individuals, frightened perhaps by threats of atomic destruction or lesser fears, who knows what, act as if nothing that men can do can save the earth. Instead, they seek salvation from outer space on the forlorn premise that flying saucer men, by their very existence, are wiser and more advanced than we. Such people may reason that a race of men capable of interplanetary travel have lived well into, or through, an atomic age. They have survived, and they can tell us their secret of survival. Maybe the threat of an atomic war unified their planet and allowed them to divert their war effort to one of social and technical advancement. To such people, a searchlight on a cloud or a bright star is an interplanetary spaceship. If all the UFO reports that the Air Force has received in the past 8 years could be put in this psychological quirk category, Project Blue Book would never have been organized. It is another class of reports that causes the Air Force to remain interested in UFOs. This class of reports are called unknowns. In determining the identity of a UFO, the project based its method of operation on a well-known psychological premise. This premise is that to get a reaction from one of the senses, there must be a stimulus. If you think you see a UFO, you must have seen something. Pure hallucinations are extremely rare. For anything flying in the air, the stimulus could be anything that is normally seen in the air. Balloons, airplanes, and astronomical bodies are the commoner stimuli. Birds and insects are common also, but usually are seen at such close range. Infrequently observed things, such as sundogs, mirages, huge fireballs, and a host of other unusual flying objects, are also known stimuli. On Project Blue Book, our problem was to identify these stimuli. We had methods for checking the location at any time of every balloon launched anywhere in the United States. To a certain degree, the same was true for airplanes. The UFO observer's estimate of where the object was located in the sky helped us to identify astronomical bodies. Huge files of UFO characteristics, along with up-to-the-minute weather data and advice from specialists, permitted us to identify such things as sundogs, paper caught in updrafts, huge meteors, etc. This determination of the stimuli that triggered UFO sightings, while not an insurmountable task, was a long, tedious process. The identification of known objects was routine and caused no excitement. The excitement and serious interest occurred when we received UFO reports in which the observer was reliable and the stimuli could not be identified. These were the reports that challenged the project and caused me to spend hours briefing top U.S. officials. These were the reports that we called unknowns. Of the several thousand UFO reports that the Air Force has received since 1947, some 15 to 20% fall into this category called unknown. This means that the observer was not affected by any determinable psychological quirks, and that after exhaustive investigation, the object that was reported could not be identified. To be classed as an unknown, a UFO report also had to be good, meaning that it had to come from a competent observer and had to contain a reasonable amount of data. Reports are often seen in the newspapers that say, "Mrs.